Good morning, and welcome to our first chapel in the season of Advent. So, for many of you, if not most of you, you may have been waiting for 2020 to be over, and if that describes you, I don't blame you in the least. However, I've got good news if that's you, because while we've got to wait for January 1st before the calendar year actually rolls over, the liturgical year, the Christian year, actually has already begun. It begins with Advent. So you've already made it through the last year, and we are looking forward now to the birth of Christ in Christmas, to what God is going to do, what God is already doing all around us. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to this new thing that God is doing. So today we're going to go back into Revelation a little bit. Now, I know those of you that have either tuned in online or been sitting here in Sherman Center throughout the semester might be a little confused by that, because I thought we'd finish Revelation, right? We started back in August, we did several weeks of different passages in the book of Revelation, and we finally got to the last chapter, and it seemed like we were done. Not so fast. The truth is, we're never really done with Revelation, because while it's maybe funny to laugh about it as, oh, this is the apocalypse, this is the end of the world, that's not really what Revelation is. It's not a blueprint for the end of things. It's a description of the way things always are. So the storytelling in Revelation is not linear point A to point B to point C. It's spirals and circles and poetry and impressions. So whenever we look at Revelation, we're never really finished with it. We're always finding ourselves in that story, which is why it always has something important to say to us, especially now. So the passage I'm going to read to you is at the center of the book of Revelation, one of the hinge points of the book, one of the hinge points of history. And here's what it says, starting in chapter 12, verse 1. A great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs, in the agony of giving birth. Then another portent appeared in heaven, a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail swept down a third of the stars in heaven and threw them to the earth. Then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child, so that he might devour the child as soon as it was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with an iron rod. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, so that there she can be nourished for 1,260 days. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. The dragon and his angels fought back, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, I know this is strange, right? But this is a story you know. Hang with me for just a second. It's easy to get caught up in all the strange imagery, the pregnant woman with crowns on her head and getting snatched away, and this dragon that's trying to eat the child. It's a bit much. And a lot of us, when we hear a passage like this, we just kind of tune out after the second verse. But you know the story. Think about it. Do you know the story of a woman who is beloved in heaven, who is about to give birth to a child who will rule the nations? It's the Christmas story. Now, there's some debate among people that study Revelation about what this passage actually means in all its various parts, but in general, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a story that retells the birth of the Messiah and tells it as both a promise and a threat. Now, clearly the dragon is threatened by this. The dragon, called the devil, called Satan, we see, is out to snatch the child, to stop this thing before it starts. And that's the way power works in our world. Those that have power, those that have wealth, those that have authority, they tend to like the status quo. They tend to like the way things are. But here is a baby being born that's going to upend that entire world, that's going to cause everything to flip, that's going to bring good news to the poor, that's going to proclaim release to the captives, that's going to work by a different set of values than what the world normally runs under. So this child is a threat to the dragon. This child is a threat to us. We get really worked up over the way we want the world to be, over how things are going to work out for our small little lives. We get really worked up sometimes over small things. The difference between a B plus and an A minus, things like that, folks, it doesn't matter all that much. We get focused on ourselves, but this child that's coming is going to break us out of that. He's going to say, there's a new world coming and you can participate in it, but it's going to cost you something. And more than that, it's going to cost you everything. When we read what Jesus asks for when he talks to his disciples in the Gospels, he says, deny yourselves, take up your cross, follow me. If you want to save your life, lay it down, all of it. That's a threatening statement. It's a threatening invitation. And it's a big leap of faith to say that I'm going to stake my life on that and follow it as though it was true and see it for myself. So the baby's a threat, but the baby's also a promise. And we see this as the passage plays out a little bit. So this child is taken to God, and the forces of heaven rally around it. Michael, the archangel of God, and his armies, they go out into battle against Satan. And we see them defeat the dragon. The dragon is thrown out of heaven. There's no place for him anymore. He's gone. That's it. So this is a story of victory, of just by the fact that this child comes into the world, that Jesus is born, then that is the victory over the darkness. And it's something worth celebrating, or it would be if we stopped reading there. But there's more. As you go further into chapter 12, as you go down into chapter 13, there's a beast that comes up. The beast with multiple heads, with multiple crowns, with all kinds of scary, horrible powers. The beast seems to be even more powerful than the dragon. And people think, who can stand against this thing? We have no shot against this. We might as well go along with whatever the dragon wants. But when the dragon, with what the beast wants. But when the beast speaks with the voice of a dragon. And the thing we know about the dragon is it's already been defeated. That it's powerless, really, because God has already taken care of that. So it can snarl, it can growl, it can bite, it can threaten, and maybe it can do real harm, but it can't do ultimate harm. All the things that we see around us, when we look at the world and just the difficult state that we're in because of the virus, because of climate change, because of our eagerness to plant flags and refusal to listen or to compromise, all the difficulties that we've got, those things don't have ultimate power, because God has ultimate power and Jesus is leading us somewhere. So I hope as you approach this Christmas season and you think about this story out of Revelation, you think about the Gospels that we're going to read and Isaiah that we're going to read, the prophecies that we'll see, I hope that you'll look at this child both as a threat and a promise. And I hope that you will let him break you open and get you out of your selfishness and out of your worry and out of your despair and out of your self-pity. And I hope that he'll open you up to share with your neighbors, to step out in faith, lay down your life, and join others who are doing the same thing. Because the promise is more real than the threat. That the light shines in the darkness. The light of the world has come, and the darkness will not extinguish it. Never will. So I hope this is good news. I hope this finds you well. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And I hope that as we go from this place, you'll remember, as always, to go in peace and take care of each other.